That is weird. You know, yours should have a big name on it. Something.
Here comes the bus.
Like it's some Mission Impossible or some James Bond type bus.
This is October 7th, 2012. The field trip down to Providence, Brown University, and Rhode Island School of Design. We'll be on our way in a minute. Here we are loading the bus. Some chow hounds still over there getting some last minute goodies. And this is John, our president, getting ready to get things organized here.
I know I'm here. I know Eric Harrington's here. I know Lil Bursch is here. Adrian's here. Dave Wilson's here. Ed and Ruth are here. Dick's here. Henry's here. Joe's here. George is here. George.
Here.
Barbara, right?
Right.
Barbara. Okay.
John, do you need any stuff here?
What is it all? All right. Anybody need anything other here?
From Brown University, getting off the bus.
Okay.
So we're getting off the bus, gonna head to the astronomy department here at Brown. It's a beautiful campus here. Really lovely, green, dignified, very nice. Well, we're in the astronomy department now. I think we're getting ready to hear a lecture, but we'll find out in a couple of minutes. We'll get a refill on the coffee here in anticipation of that.
Now you've been in. Okay. Welcome to the field trip. And okay, Pete Schultz actually really needs no introduction, but I just want to give a little character story. The first time I introduced Pete to a PHSNE lecture, a PHSNE presentation, was back in my very first year on the PHSNE board, and I had introduced him, giving this great story about what I remembered telling me of research and stuff like that, and it was all wonderful and at length. Afterwards, I'm talking to him and asked him how he liked the introduction, and he very politely pointed out to me that what I was describing was the research technique of his arch rival. I misremembered the story that he had told me, but he was very, very gracious about it. And what can I say? He then went on to talk about actually shooting with a BB gun rather than a cannon and stuff like that. So, give you Professor Schultz, our host today.
Thank you, Peter.
To make it here, I'm anxious to show you everything we've got. Right next door is the Planetary Data Center. This is one of about 16 different data centers around the world. 8 of them are in the United States. And we're basically a repository for all the photographs, maps, documents, which makes it a really important reservoir or reference collection for us who do the real work with analyzing the photographs. And analyzing not the photographs, but the things that are inside the photographs. Big distinction. Because right now, with all digital imaging, you can spend a day processing one image, but you're not getting any science out of it. And it's a tendency I have to control my students. I once had one student who was trying to put together these 2 images and did it for an entire month. But we actually had the photograph, a map, that he could have done the entire project in about 1 hour. And that's what's happening now. People now are getting wrapped up with the digital imaging, get wrapped up in the process of being technical rather than actually understanding what's in it. So, constant battle. I'm of old school, but still firmly believe in it. But I'll show you what you know about telescopes. And I know that you've had a talk with somebody doing the history of astronomy and photography. But I'll just kind of give you my perspective. For example, if you've ever been to the Florence Museum of Science, an incredible place, but that's the Galileo's lens. This is one of their rooms with all the telescopes. But we go from 1610 to the Galileo's telescope to the Gregorian reflector around 1750s. This is to these big long-neck telescopes from the 1700s to the classic explosion of telescopes, and finally the Bond refractor in Cambridge. This kind of gives you an idea of what these telescopes evolved since over the last 400 years or so. one of the things I was always fascinated by were these big, long-neck telescopes. If you ever get to Munich, Germany, they have a wonderful exhibit of telescopes in the museum. And this particular one has these dioramas and shows you the feeling of what these long-neck telescopes look like. And this was used by people like Hevelius and Riccioli. In fact, what they used to do, they took the lens and would put it on the top of the building. And then the observer would be on the ground, and they would move around to be able to look for a different object. Just give you a sense of how dark it is. Like, for example, this particular map, which comes out of, this is from Hevelius. And you probably know that most mapping goals in this time frame were really to honor patrons. This is a classic example from Salarius, which shows this beautiful renditions, and there would be names attached to either people in the papacy or their benefactors. But when it came to lunar maps, this became very important. Hevelius ended up making names that was really honoring the patron. But this kind of gives you the sense of scale of these big things. Even those long focus refractors had 6-inch diameter objectives. So what they could see on the moon was something like this. Gilbert, who was the father of magnetism, he actually made one of the very first maps based on just seeing with your eye. It's very difficult to look at the moon with your naked eye and try to imagine what you can see without foreknowledge of what you know from a telescope. You look at the moon and you realize, I think I can see the crater Tycho. But a lot of that is because you know that's the crater Tycho. But this gives you the kind of resolution of 300 kilometers all the way to Galileo, 30 kilometers. You can see one of the craters, that's Ptolemaios. And you can actually see these things. But eventually, by the time we got to Schaller, and this is an image from the Lick Observatory, and Tim Mutz was actually the team leader for that particular mission. And he passed away. He was a mountain climber, and he fell into a crevasse, and they never found him. I think they finally found his body later. One of the panoramic from the Apollo program. This is a panoramic image. But they took this and used an enormous enlarger that did this in rolls, and they enlarged it to 10-inch format. And this was all rectified, so it was done not just simply corrected, it was corrected to be exactly the right dimensions. So it's a completely photogrammetrically correct panoramic image. But most of the images that they used for photogrammetry was this, that 5-inch mapping camera, Hasselblad image. This is a 5-inch square, so this could be enlarged even more. And that's just give you an example of how good these cameras are.
The original was 5 inches square.
5 inches square.
Here we are at our next stop, Rhode Island School of Design. And you see an art show here of evolving American photography. Should be interesting. Light rain has started, but doesn't matter because we're going to be inside. We finished up at the Ground Data Center, Astronomy Data Center. We're now at the Rhode Island School of Design lobby. So we'll be going upstairs pretty quick, and we'll be getting a lecture. Had quite a good turnout today, over 30 people. The last stop was extremely interesting. Combination of photography, telescopes, and planetary geology.
Donated work in his honor, so we wanted to do a show to reflect that gift, those gifts to the museum.
Yeah, and so a lot of Joe Deal was working in the 1970s with a group of landscape photographers whose work you'll see in the sort of 1970s section. So this exhibition sort of aims to bracket that work, so give a survey of landscape photography from its its invention to the 70s, and then show sort of the effect of that 70s work on modern practitioners. So it's arranged chronologically, and we thought that maybe the best way to walk through it was to go sort of group by group, section by section, and then maybe answer any questions you guys had about the particular sort of segment of time.
How big is this section? How many rooms?
All in all, it's about 3 large rooms, or 4 counting this room. So there's this, then there's a big 19th century section, and then sort of a 70s and modernism, and then a more contemporary section right there.
So it starts. Yeah, I think we don't want the text. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want you to do that.
Here is the Land Observatory of Brown University with the dome on the top. It has a lot of historical astronomy equipment from the 1890s, and it's used for educational purposes these days.
The microscope was designed to be used with the telescope upstairs. So on the back of the telescope there's a holder where you put an eyepiece in and you can look at the stars. But that entire mechanism unscrews, you can pull it off and put in a holder which has 2 metal bars coming out, and it slides into here. So this entire mechanism bolts right onto the back of the telescope. There's a semi-cylindrical lens here which focuses the light not to a spot but into a line which falls on a slit, a very, very narrow slit made of 2 razor blades closely held together. So the light from that then gets focused onto the prism, which disperses the light into the rainbow of colors, and then this little telescope here allows you to examine exactly what the pattern of light coming from the lamp is. And there's also a vernier here that you can read off, and usually an astronomer in 1890 would have a candle, you'd sprinkle some chemical into it, and calibrate this by looking at your known spectral lines. Then you attach it to the telescope and you observe a star and try to match up what chemicals it's made of. Right now this is a mercury vapor lamp, just like in a street light. If you want to come up and have a look one at a time, you can have a seat here and just take a look right through this eyepiece. You'll see 2 yellowish and 1 green lines. These windows are pocket windows. The top and bottom slide down into this pocket right down here. So you can have it open from here all the way up to overhead, and the same on the other side. There are 2 stations, this one and the one over here for telescopes. This one was used for training students. The base of it is a brick that goes straight down, and this one is kind of a small base. The one underneath that telescope, however, flares out like a pyramid. And it's almost the width of this room here. And that gives added stability so that vibrations don't affect your observations when you're looking through the telescope. This is actually a portable telescope. It has a carrying box that you can put it in, and it was designed to be used in the field. This one was about 1830s. It was owned by someone in New Bedford who calibrated and repaired clocks. And in particular, he used this to calibrate the marine chronometers that were used by the captains of the whaling vessels that sailed out of the port. So he would calibrate their timepieces before they sailed, and then they would use that for navigation while they were at sea. These telescopes can only point in an arc like this. So this room is aligned with north in that direction, the zenith, and then south over here. And what you do is you wait for the Earth's rotation to cause a star to rise and move in front of the telescope's view. And depending on which star you see, you can do calculations to figure out exactly what time it is. And that was one of the main purposes of this particular room. And screw in, which has 2 metal bars coming off of it, and the spectroscope bolts on it as well. And when you do that, you might have to move some of the weights around to counterbalance it, because the telescope needs to stay in balance to be able to track the stars properly. Especially with the spectroscope, it's critical, because if the telescope is out of balance, it's not going to follow the stars at the correct rate, and you're trying to keep an image of the star on a slit, which is, very thin.
You practice with an assistant man the wheels that can command.
The wheels are only used to aim the telescope, and of course, and then once you do, you lock it down, and these wheels can't be turned once it's locked. So once the clock drive engages, you can't use those, and instead you can use these small fine-tuning knobs. So that makes very subtle adjustments in the angle of the telescope. Now,